Hello and welcome to the Leah Talks podcast. I'm Leah and I help stressed mums find some calmness on the yoga mat. And today we are joined by Anne. So, Anne, can you just introduce yourself a little bit? Let us know who you are and what you do.
Good morning, Leah. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. My name's Anne Green. I'm a Reiki practitioner and Reiki master. I consider myself a uh, holistic therapist and coach. Alongside my Reiki, I also do reflexology, a little bit of meditation as well. And what I found is that in the sessions that I do, the hands-on sessions, there was a lot of coaching, a lot of spiritual and mindset and general life coaching. And so I've incorporated that into my business as well.
Amazing. It's so, there's like all these things do kind of mush together, don't they? Like when I started yoga, I did find that a lot of people would then come at you with like personal questions and stuff like that as well. And they do,
Yeah.
obviously, yoga does change your life. So people do expect, I guess, a little bit more than just the physical yoga, and they do expect a little bit more of the kind of therapist kind of thing as well. And I don't know if you knew this, but I was actually a mobile hairdresser, and I found the same with that. Like I
Mhm.
would go and do people's hair and it would end up like a therapy session. So it's so interesting that
Yes.
then I went into yoga and it kind of ended up being the same kind of thing. And I can see how Reiki would do that even more, because I mean that's more about spiritual and more inside, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's very much about development. And I think actually for all those things that you've mentioned and the modalities, I really don't like that word, but it kind of works. Modalities that I do, I think we're building a trust. So even in hairdressing, there is this trust element. You're working one to one. There is the trust, and if people trust you, they can open up to you, and they see you as in control, doing something well, and then they feel they can trust you and open up, and hopefully you can guide them, or they think you can guide them into wherever they want to go next.
Yeah.
Is definitely what I find. And like you say, Reiki very much is about self-development. It's about releasing blocks as well as finding the rest and the peace. And so at that stage, I think people almost need a little guidance just to help them understand the blocks that they're releasing or the blocks that they're finding
Yeah.
in themselves.
Yeah. And I know that you found Reiki through doing yoga first. So can you explain a little bit
It's
more on how yoga and spiritual practices like changed your life?
Yes, so it's quite a story. So my background, I worked in kind of medical settings. So I was just dispenser with boots, then general practice, and then just a very bizarre twist took me into construction. So kind of a non-spiritual background completely. I then had what I have always called a life-changing experience. Basically, I lost my husband at quite a young age. I was in my late 30s, and that really turned my world upside down. A
Sorry to hear
friend of
that.
mine who was single at the time, we then spent a lot of time together. And I don't know, we were just talking about something. I remember sitting around hers talking about doing some exercise, not being able to sleep. That was it. And she had read in a magazine a little snippet about a couple of yoga exercises, yoga, I now know asana, that
Yeah.
would help you to sleep. So this little short snippet, I'm like, oh, this looks quite interesting. So I tried this. And then she gave me a DVD, Barbara Curry. Do you remember Barbara Curry? Yoga teacher,
I don't
lycra
actually.
clad.
No, no, I don't.
No? Okay. So, I mean, back then, so we're talking 15 years ago, and she was very much kind of lycra clad DVD. But I did that for months, if not years, before actually went to a proper class. And that, I think, by doing the asana and knowing now how the asana can change your body and change your mindset, really helped my transformation. It helped me come out of the dark place that I was in. It helped me transform into, or the start of the transformation into the person I became or have become, which is much happier, much more confident. I'm a very different person to the one I was 15 years ago. Um, and that was through that little article on yoga, following the DVD for a long, long time. And then I found a local class. And then through there, I remember lying in the class, lying in Shavasana at the end of a class one day, going, I would love to teach this. I'd love to do what she's doing. And it was the sharing it was the understanding that actually if your body isn't going to make that shape, well, you can adjust it slightly, and you can listen to your body, and you can find what works for you on that day. And it was all that kind of stuff. So I never did pursue my dream, or that particular idea of becoming a yoga teacher, and I don't think it's for me. But actually, then life took me on a very different tangent altogether. But that was the start of the practice, that led to everything else.
So then how did you
And yet, so
find,
I've got yoga.
yeah, so how did you find Reiki then? Because I know that they are joined, and I know I've never actually
Yeah.
done Reiki myself, and but being a
Mhm.
yoga teacher, I have heard it come up so often. So was it just like something somebody mentioned to you?
Yeah, kind of. And I always find it interesting that they are very much linked, or considered very much linked, and yet they come from different backgrounds.
Mm.
So obviously we know yoga comes from an Indian background, and Reiki comes from Japan. So I always find it really interesting that people in our Western culture link them very closely together. But I suppose it's because of the underlying principles, which we come back to in a bit. So my journey, where did I get to? So the friend that showed me this magazine article, she had a friend that she worked with. They were both in accounts, so completely non kind of spiritual. The friend did her pink and fluffy stuff. That turned out to be Reiki. And I got chatting with her on a couple of occasions, and she had just done her master's level, that's the teaching level, and was beginning to think about writing her own course. And I didn't know anything about Reiki, but I said to her, when you're teaching, let me know. I want to do this. Still don't know why I knew that. Anyway, time went past, didn't see her again. A few months later, I bumped into her in town. She'd just started a yoga retreat with a friend, not a yoga retreat, sorry, a spiritual retreat with a friend. And she was about to start teaching Reiki.
Fate.
So I said, right, sign me up. Was great. And then I think about a month before, I contacted her again and said, look, can I come and have a session with you? I've never actually experienced this. I've no idea what it is. I know I've signed up and I've paid my money to do the course, but I don't actually know what it is. Um, and that was a very different session to anything I'd ever had before. Just knew once I did the Reiki 1 course, and I was still, I was office manager, business development in construction. I knew I wanted Reiki in my life all the time. At that point, there was no concept of me starting a business. As I did my Reiki 2 and Reiki 3 some years later, again, just I needed it with me all the time, and then started training as a reflexologist and thought, "Hmm, right, I'll set myself a 5-year plan to get out of construction and to do this for myself." 2 years in, I ditched the construction. I walked away. I said, I can't do this anymore. The ethics weren't right. It didn't feel right. It wasn't sitting comfortably. Um, my spiritual practice had grown, knowing all that I knew at that stage for living a better life, a kinder life. I think that was it, a kinder life.
Yeah.
And that's where it changed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
So
brave, isn't it? Because a lot
I
of
rambled on a
people,
bit there.
no, that's good. I feel like a lot of people do end up just staying in their like corporate job because it's safe, and it is hard
Yeah.
to just go out there and do something completely new, especially if you didn't even know what it was, which is amazing.
I know. I think by that stage, by the time I made the decision that then obviously I did know more
Yeah.
about it, but initially knowing nothing about it,
Mm,
um, I just was drawn to this.
yeah.
I needed it in my life. I knew, and a lot of people will say that to me. They book with me. They go, I don't know why. I don't know why I want it, but I just do. Once they start having the sessions, or once they sign up to do the course with me, because obviously I'm now teaching myself, they as they start getting it into their life, they then realize why they needed it, because they start seeing the transformation that it brings. And it does transform. It does get in and release the blocks, whether that's on a physical level or an emotional level. And it's once those blocks start being released that we start to see the transformation that it can really bring.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting, really exciting.
So for anybody who doesn't quite understand what Reiki is, I'm just having a think then as you were talking.
Yeah.
How would you explain like the way people might feel before Reiki and the way they might feel afterwards? I feel like people will understand more if they understand that, if they get the
Okay.
feelings. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. That's actually a really hard question to answer, because that differs from person to person and
Mhm.
session to session.
Yeah.
So if I just go back a step, Reiki, the concept of Reiki is that it's the universal life force energy. As a practitioner, I don't share my energy, but I bring in more of that energy and I pass it on to the person that I'm working with.
Mhm.
This energy we already have in our body, and as you're getting more of that, you begin to, as I say, unlock some stuff. So you might come in feeling stressed, tired, anxious, unwell, physically unwell, maybe in pain. By the end of the session, the only thing I can guarantee is that you will feel relaxed.
Mhm.
Um, Everything else depends on where you are at that point. But most people find it's the most relaxed they've ever been.
Yeah.
I volunteer at a daycare hospice, working in a cancer support group, and a lot of the patients there just are so tense because of the treatment that they're going through. They do find they come out of it saying, I have never felt so relaxed. So it brings a physical relaxation, but a mental relaxation, which is a peace. It's a deep inner peace that they've perhaps not experienced, if ever, certainly not for a long time. With repeated sessions, you then start to find you feel different. And that could be you look at life differently or you're reacting to situations differently. People tell me, they come back and say, where I might have been really angry in this situation, I'm not. And I don't know why not. And it's really hard to explain that. But I would say that's because we're releasing some of those blocks of mindset or behavior patterns. And we're looking, the the Reiki energy comes in and our soul, our inner self knows that it's time to change, time to release some of that stuff. And even though we might consciously not be aware of that, these things are happening underneath. And that's why we then react differently. So sometimes it's really subtle and builds up over time. Sometimes they might have quite a transformation on the couch. So sometimes it can be really emotional. There can be tears, there can be laughter. I had a lady the other day who were started giggling, it just uncontrollably giggling, that turned into tears, and she had this massive release. It was to do with grief, actually, but she was able to release something. And I've seen her since, and she said that, just the way she looks at things now is different. So it's really hard to say you come in like this and you go out like that, but over time, you kind of build up this change that happens within you.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot
I
of
hope that
people?
gives some explanation.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. Do you find that a lot of people come to you for grief, or do you not really share your story and you just end up helping them with whatever they come in with?
The latter, probably. I mean, if it comes up, I share my story.
Yeah.
And I did more so maybe a few years ago. These days, not so much. It doesn't come up. People come to me for all kinds of things. What I'm finding at the moment is a lot of people are realizing that they want to be different or want to react differently. They want to think differently, but they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the coaching comes in these days, because working on a lot of mindset work, and there's a lot of tools and tips that we can use underlying to help that transformation. And then Reiki gets in and does all the subtle stuff underneath.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's the non-conscious stuff.
Yeah. I do find
Yeah.
that a lot of, maybe it's just like the time, but I do find a lot of people now are waking up a little bit, like they are realizing that we're too busy and we're too stressed, and it's work, and this is why I do find a lot of people come to yoga, because they need to slow down, because everybody is just so busy all the time. And I think it's good for people, especially anybody listening, that if you are thinking of going into a spiritual practice, know that there is so many different things out there. Like there's not even just yoga and Reiki, there's like so many other different things. So it's really good to
Yeah.
find what one relates to you. um so on that note, for anybody who is listening, because I've asked this in my last podcast and I'm going to make this a regular thing now, can
Okay.
you give 3 pieces of advice for people who maybe are, I don't know, they want to improve their life, say? Any advice at
Okay.
all?
Any advice at all? Okay. So, wow. Yeah, where to start? Where to start? Okay, so I'll start with the three things that work with me, because this is where I come from. When I'm helping people, I work with what's worked for me.
Yeah.
And I think the first and most important thing is realizing that everything happens for a reason. When I learned that, and that's probably only maybe 10 to 12 years ago, it was massive. And when I say everything happens for a reason, I mean everything. Whether it's the life-changing situations, whether it's the grief, whether it's the dream job that goes pear-shaped because the boss turns into the boss from hell, whatever it is, these things come to teach us lessons. And that's the reason they happen. They happen so that we can learn and grow. And I think that when I learned that, that was transformational, because then when the bad things come in life, it doesn't stop the bad things happening, but when they do come in life, you can step back and go, okay, this will pass, this will change, but I've got to learn from it. What can I take from this to learn and grow?
And that's very powerful coming from you who've been through what you've been through as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that wasn't my first experience of close grief either. So it's kind of, I've learned this over many things, and the grief obviously was a big part of it, and it taught me to be a stronger person, amongst other things. So I think the second part that goes hand in hand with this would be, don't judge yourself. When things go wrong, don't judge yourself for the bad decisions that you made, or seemingly bad decisions that you made. Don't judge others for what they did to you. As hard as it may sound, you've brought this to yourself. Sorry, that sounds really cruel, but we do bring these things to ourselves because we need to learn from them. And when I learned that, again, I took another leap forward in my own personal growth. So they're tough things to hear, but if you can really embody that, really kind of take it into your heart, you can really, really learn and grow from that.
Yeah.
And the third bit of advice would be really, really simple, and that's drink more water.
Yeah. A
Drink more
simple
water.
one that nobody does.
No, exactly. I mean, people have often said that should be on my headstone, because I say it so often. When we drink more water, not only does our skin look brighter and our body feel better and function better, but actually we think more clearly, we think in a kinder way, because there's a clarity that we can focus better. Life does actually seem simpler, and that seems quite a cliche. That sounds quite a cliche, but it actually is true.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
love that.
those
That's
would
some
be my
great
bits.
advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to
The
throw in the
last
water.
one.
I've got to get that in.
Yeah, that's it. You do have to, because I remember I made my nan a cup of tea once, and I was like, Nan, have you drank any water today? And I don't think she actually drinks water. She will only have tea all the time. Now she'll have squash as well. But yeah, I'm like, Nan, you got to drink some water. Yeah, it's so important.
It's frightening the people that don't drink water. Yeah, it is. It really is, and it's such a simple thing that
Yeah.
we can all do and all increase.
Yeah.
Am I going with a cup of tea? My advice to people is, while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, go and drink a glass of water.
Yes. Do you know what? I made that one of my habits. Instead of, when I would make a cup of tea, I'd use the mug, I'd have a cup of water first and then
Yes,
have tea. Yeah, I do that
that's
every
it.
time now.
Yeah, yeah,
Such a
yeah.
good
Me
trick.
too. It's brilliant, isn't it? It's really good. It's
Amazing.
so simple. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved this little
Oh,
chat. Before we
thank you for
head
having me
off,
here.
that's all right.
Mm,
Can you let people know where to find you, and
yes.
how they can work with you if they're interested in Reiki?
Yeah, of course. So in fact, you can probably see that on the screen, or would do if the hand thing wasn't in the way. So my company is Medulla Holistic Therapies. Medulla is part of the brain that helps us heal. So that's where the medulla came from. So you can find me at www.medulla.space. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook handle at Medulla Space. And the space is finding space in the mind, finding space in the body. Yeah, so my website, Facebook and Instagram is where you mostly find me. I do have some capacity for some hands-on therapies for Reiki and Reflexology, and I'm also writing a self-study course at the moment to help with transformation and learning from lessons. So that's really exciting news that's coming soon, hopefully soon. And with the teaching Reiki, so I do teach Reiki, I teach levels 1 and 2 at the moment, and then I've just created the Reiki Hub, which is a space where all my Reiki students can come and we can kind of learn and grow together, and we keep that continued support because I can then support them forever. I'm always their Reiki master, but then I can continue that support for them.
Awesome. I will
So,
make sure that I link everything in the description below so that everybody can find you. And if anybody's listening and has any questions for me or Anne, please feel free to give us a message. Thank you so much for joining me.
thank you, Leah. Lovely to be here today.
Thank you.